In the world, there are about 370 million indigenous people that belong to more than 5,000 different groups and make up 5% of the world's population. Although there is no generally accepted definition of indigenous, there are common characteristics of the indigenous people. They usually make up a small percentage of the country's population, an exception to Bolivia and Guatemala, where more than half of their population is indigenous. They typically have, or had, their own language and practice their own cultural traditions. They also usually have, or had, their own territory or land. But indigenous peoples' rights are frequently violated. They are politically underrepresented and do not have access to social and other services. They have no say when their land is being taken over by projects, and when projects do take over their land, the indigenous people are forced to relocate. Over time, some indigenous people realized that they were being mistreated, specifically Rigoberta Menchú, a Guatemalan Mayan Indian woman who faced oppression for most of her life. Many of her family members were killed because they were thought to be associated with guerrilla activism. Her father was burned alive in the Spanish embassy during a protest against the Guatemalan government. 4 months after her father's death, her mother was kidnapped, repeatedly raped, and physically tortured by the Guatemalan police. 3 of her brothers died as a result of mistreatment by the Guatemalan government. One of her brothers suffered malnutrition at 2 years old, while their mother was forced to work on a coffee plantation. With no proper care, nutrition, and medicine, her brother died. Menchú and her mother took 15 days off from work to help bury her brother. When they came back, the landowner fired them because they were not working. In 1980, Menchú helped organize a strike that lasted for 15 days. The end result was that workers got a fair wage and better treatment from landowners. However, Menchú and thousands of other indigenous Guatemalans had to flee Guatemala, fearing for their own personal safety. She fled to Mexico, where she wrote her book, I, Rigoberta Menchú. The book gave a detailed account of her life in Guatemala, which brought global attention to the dispute between the Guatemalan government and the native people. The recognition of her book awarded her the Nobel Peace Prize in 1992. With the prize money, she created a foundation that would campaign for the human rights for the indigenous peoples. Menchú's book revealed the Guatemalan Indians' plight. At the same time, it showed that their human rights were being violated. The Guatemalan government was not adhering to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights proclaimed by the United Nations in 1948. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a document that sets a common standard for fundamental human rights to be universally protected. Based on Menchú's autobiography, the Guatemalan government violated the following articles. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 17.2. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Article 25.1. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, and the right to security in circumstances beyond his control. Article 25.2. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children shall enjoy the same social protection. For the indigenous people, they have struggled in the recognition of their rights. It wasn't until 2007 that the United Nations officially adopted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The Declaration contains 46 articles that protect the rights of indigenous people, as well as the rights of those that may not have been addressed in other human rights charters. The Declaration was a major triumph for Rigoberta Menchú and the other 370 million indigenous people around the world. In learning about the injustice experienced by the indigenous people, we have come to an understanding that human rights should be universal. Regardless of a person's skin color, religion, or heritage, we are all entitled to the basics of life. Injustice exists in this world. By speaking up for your rights, you can defeat it. In order to create change, you must take action. As Rigoberta Menchú said, this world is not going to change unless we're willing to change ourselves.